How's it going, internets? I hope you're having a lovely day. It's that time again. It's time to get into some animation. It's time to get that imagination all revved up and get into some creativity. It's time to get inspired. And today's inspiration comes from Frank Quitely. And if you're not familiar with his work, check right over here. He is a phenomenal illustrator, comic book artist, penciler, inker, colorist extraordinaire. I love his work. I think he's got a very masterful understanding of anatomy and a very playful way of caricaturizing that, as well as blending it with more natural and physical and realism as well. As you can see, the kind of over-exaggerated jaw here, but just really strong anatomy down below. Great posing, just lovely work. He's worked with X-Men, Star Wars, Superman, Batman, tons of all of the greats, for sure. I don't know if we worked on Conan, though. I love Conan. It wouldn't be an episode of Animation Time if I didn't mention Conan. But just look at these great whimsical characters he comes up with and the way that he has such great line work. I'm really, really impressed with that. He does that thing that I think is so phenomenal of having really tight pencils or inks, but still having not losing the life in them as well. And I think that's a tough thing to master, and he definitely did that. And great posing. I mean, look at the strength built into there. That's just some phenomenal posing. Again, just the expression and the way that he renders everything, and still kind of keeps a little bit of the chaos in there as well. It's just beautiful. So definitely check out more of his stuff in the description below. I will throw a link to some more if you guys want to see more of his amazing work. But I did want to share a quote from him as well with you guys, and that was, like everything I do, it's just a question of seeing it work in my mind and spending as long as it takes to make it work on paper. I think that's a great quote. It's really about building that imagination, creativity muscle inside your head. I think the stronger that becomes, and this is just, I guess, anecdotal evidence or personal experience, but the more that I expand my creative worldview, or my worldview in general, and the more time that I work and spend studying other people's work and just dinking around, no matter if it's something that I'm doing for a freelance job or a studio job or whatever it may be, the more that I can immerse myself in there, the stronger that muscle becomes. The more I can do a lot of the rough work in my head before I even sit down and start playing around with it. And I think that's a really big key and muscle to grow. And I don't feel like that's talked about nearly enough in the creative world, at least from what I've seen, of the rather than, and this sounds weird, rather than pre-planning in your sketchbooks, I try to pre-plan in my head, and then I can just kind of come out. And again, sometimes it's not the best idea, and I might, do a couple iterations of it as well, still on paper. But I think I've noticed the stronger work that I end up at the end of the day is the work that I've been able to compose almost all of it in my head, and then just sit there and try and mimic that connection between my imagination and my head to out into my fingers or my hands or the end result. And it's a great struggle, because there's definitely days where I'm like, this isn't how I imagined it, and I'm sure you guys deal with that too. But also just a good muscle to try and build. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into some animation. This is the Human Male rig. It's a free rig you can grab over at Creative Crash. I will throw a link to it in the description below. And if you're not familiar with what we'll be doing for the rest of the video, we give ourselves 48 frames, and give or take. Sometimes I go off a little bit longer, and I don't think I've ever gone under 48 frames. Anyways, I go off and I find a rig that I've never used before. It's a free resource for you guys to play around with as well. Like I said, in the description below, more stuff about Frank, and a link to this rig, as well as stuff for Autodesk Maya. And always I link to some of the books that I feel are the most helpful for starting out in animation as well. And yeah, we just kind of go from there, a little bit over the shoulder. Hang out with me while I animate, talk through the creative process, or some instruction every once in a while. Sometimes I just blabber on while I animate. Either way, the main goal of these videos is to hopefully encourage you guys and inspire you to go off and be creative today and each and every day, no matter if it's 5 minutes or if it's 5 hours. Whatever you can fit in your schedule, try and do something imaginative or creative that's something that's working, that you're producing from inside of yourself and that you can share with the world. And so that being said, let's go ahead and play around here and do some animation. So first thing I want to do is create a polygon primitives cube, just so I have a floor plane to work with. And I think I just kind of want to do almost like a Quasimodo-ish kind of hunch walk. So let's go ahead and get that built. Have that default response to think that rotate X should be or bend, but really, in this one, it's rotate Z. So you'll probably see me do that a couple of times here throughout the video. And let's see, do we actually have a hip controller? Pull that back a little bit more. And then I'm going to do something that I don't usually do, and that's break the spine. I feel like it's not bending as much as I would like it to do, but we might get too much deformation in the belly, so let's see if we can't kind of smooth that out a little bit more. Usually I would always say do the spine as a unit, where you'd grab each section of the spine and move them together. But if I want to kind of do this, it looks like I'm going to have to get into a little bit more of breaking that up than I would normally say. So let's go ahead and do that. And bring that. We just want to create an interesting kind of storytelling pose to start off with. And we'll see if we can get one out of this. We might. Maybe we won't play up the side view so much in this. We'll see. This rig, is a little CPU intensive, so just be aware of that. If you guys do end up using this rig, there is a little bit of lag, but it doesn't seem like there's nearly as much as the one we were using yesterday. So just a kind of heads up on this, I usually try to, if I notice problems or things that I think would be potential areas of struggle or hitches in your workflow when playing around with a free rig, I always try to bring those to your attention as well. And again, there might be too much broken there. Yeah, I might not have to. You know, I think I'm gonna reapproach the rotate on the spine. I feel like I just broke it a little too much. So let's go ahead and grab this guy. Rotate it down there. Rotate that down a little bit. Rotate that down a little bit as well. Go ahead and bring the head up. Access that neck control. Let's go and pull that up a little bit more. This character kind of, for some reason, is reminiscent to me of a Byrne Hogarth kind of a drawing. If you're not familiar with who he is, definitely Google that name and check out his amazing, I think it's Dynamic Anatomy. Wonderful book. Wonderful book. I think my copy was lost in the great storage facility fiasco of 2011, I think it was now. It's been a few years now. But still, phenomenal resource for anyone who wants to learn and study anatomy. Definitely check that out if you get a chance. Yeah, let's go ahead and rotate that back a little bit more. Pull it back a little bit. We want to even out the weight. Spine here, do a little bit of rotate wide, bring it forward here. These arms feel a little bit short to me. Usually I like a little more exaggerated arms, so it could just be that, but let's go ahead and get the wrist twisted a little bit better. Kind of face it out to camera. Let's go ahead and give a little bit of bend here. And once again, we just want to create a more interesting starting pose to go with here. Bring that over. Let's droop it down a little bit. We'll drop that down even more. Have this one kind of dangle downward. Yeah, let's rotate it a little bit. And we could even drag the foot here too. That'd be kind of fun. So one foot would step and the other foot would drag. So we'd lead with this foot and then have this one drag. So let's also kind of make it a dummy foot. And by that I mean let's just make it so it wouldn't be completely where the weight would be distributed. I guess we could kind of call this a zombie style walk too. And then let's push our knee pivot out there a little bit more. I'm just trying to create more of an interesting pose to start off with. And let's grab the fingers. Let's go ahead. Set some better grouping here on the fingers. And just make the hand posing. I always am a big hand person. I like making sure you get good hand poses. I think they're very important to, especially in more body mechanics shots. Because you're not going to be focusing on really acting beats, so you want to try and get the acting where you can, and then be more facial expressions, and hands I think are really important to do. Now again, a lot of the free rigs don't really have very in-depth facial rigs, so you can really get in and tweak them a lot, but if they have them, try to use them at least to set up a little bit of something that's not just the default kind of T-pose face that they give you. And let's go ahead and drag these a little bit more. So now, unlike a lot of rigs though, this does give you a little bit more of a relaxed hand pose to start off with. A lot of times you'll see them and they'll be like Fing, or just straight out. I don't even know if I can make my hand completely straight, but you'll see they'll be like, this is the hand pose, just try it. But so it's nice with this rig that they at least give you something a little bit more relaxed and nicer to start with, for sure. And overall, this feels like it's a pretty good rig. I'm not seeing too much. The spine is a little different than I probably would have set up, but other than that, it feels pretty. Okay, that's a little more interesting. And if we go from this, our silhouette should be fairly good. So let's go ahead and start there again. After talking about all the facial control stuff, I don't even go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and set that up here. It's not making me necessarily angry, but not really scared. Let's take the cheeks and go ahead and puff them out a little bit. Those lids are a little funky, so I'm just going to leave those alone. And the brow, I think I'll look at the brow a little bit more, just so we get something a little more interesting than the default facial pose. Okay, so let's go ahead and save our file. Remember, whenever you're working in 3D animation, it's always good to save multiple versions and to save often, just in case you get a sort of random computer crash or a Maya crash or whatever it may be. Okay, so again, we just want to set our frame range from 0 to 48. file, and we're going to make sure we just have our NURB curves, NURB surfaces, and polygons selected so we don't key anything we don't need. Go ahead and grab that, go to frame 0, and we'll set our first key. I'm also going to turn off the grid there as well. Okay, now first thing we want to do is get our feet and hips working okay. And I'll set that. And I don't really want the back foot to pass necessarily, but just to kind of scoot forward. And in this case it's going to be translate Y. I guess that's our forward here. And let's make sure that we zero that out. Kind of a different orientation with this ray than kind of more universal one, but that's okay. Maybe we'll push it a little bit further forward because I don't want to feel too off balance there. So let's go and push it forward more like that. And again, we want to have some pretty decent spacing and even spacing between there, so let's go ahead and push that forward and get those hips forward a little bit more, just to kind of balance out the movement there a little bit more, so it doesn't feel too unbalanced here. I'll go 36, and again, we're probably going to have to clean this up a little bit more, but that's okay. And keep that, and bring that forward here, and bring that forward there. Okay, and let's go ahead and grab this guy. Let's open our graph editor here. And let's look at our translate Y, which is going to be the left to right movement. And I might stutter this, I'm not sure, but for right now I want to make it a consistent. And what I mean by stutter is have it kind of slow and then do a big move, and slow and do a big move, so we kind of keep our balance a little bit more while allowing that back foot to react the way we want it to. Okay, and let's make sure we lock that key to 24. And let's go ahead and key this foot here. We want to keep it on the ground there, and then we want to bring that one up, down there, and lift that one up, and put it down there. So let's go ahead and look at that. Maybe we could even go a little bit further back. And bring the hips a little bit lower. Let's kind of look at the spacing between those two. I feel like this should be a little bit further forward. And then let's make sure that we duplicate that key so we don't get that slippage there. And let's look at that compared to the end. It's pretty close, but we could probably push it forward a little bit more. Bring that forward a little more as well. And keep the up and down a little bit lower. And that'll lower our sense of gravity there too, which should help keep our weight feeling a little better. So let's go ahead and look at that now. Okay, starting to feel all right. let's go down on the passing positions here, and up on the contact, and down on the passing. And if you don't understand what I mean by passing, and again, chances are you guys are 1,000 times smarter than this, but just for those of you who may be still new to this, passing position, when I say that, that's when one foot passes by the other foot in a walk, versus contact position, at least the terminology that I use. Some people use different terminology. Contact would be when both of them are on the ground, and then the passing would be that key where they're moving past one another. And again, I'm sure you guys already all know that, but I like to try and make sure that I have a little bit of content that reaches to people who are just starting out and people who maybe have been doing this for a little bit longer. And those of you who are masters, feel free to comment down below and tell me all the things that I am doing wrong, or could be doing differently, or a different methodology. I'm always happy to be proven wrong or shown better ways of doing things or anything. I think it's important as a creative person to always keep your mind open to, just because this is the methodology or way that you do things right now and the way that you view things. I think it's important to have an open mind so that you can always be learning and growing. I think it's very important for creative people, or people who are trying to use their imagination as best they can, to never lock off and get stuck into one ideology for whatever aspect of life that may refer to. Yeah, so I'm going to rotate these. And we'll bring that back. Bring that forward. Let's grab these guys and let's counter animate that. Up. And then up. And then back. And let's go ahead and clean that up a little bit more. Like I said, this spine's set up a little bit differently than I normally would go to, but that's okay. It's always good to, I think, to challenge yourself to try different rigs and different characters to play around with whenever you're doing 3D animation, so you don't get copacetic or really passive and think that things are all the same way. It's a good challenge to do. Yeah, let's see that now. Too much, so let's go ahead and increase that a little bit more. Like I said, there's a little bit of lag, so I'm just kind of leafing through this rather than letting it play by itself. Let's look at the translate Y again. Do feel like that should be maybe a little bit further forward. It does seem to get a little bit lower throughout here too. Let's go and look at that now. And let's go ahead and make this a little bit longer. So let's 6, 7, 8. Give ourselves 8 more frames, which would put that back to 56. And we'll just slow everything down a little bit. I feel like this would be a slower kind of walk anyways. So go and give ourselves an extra frame there. here, so it'll be on a cycle of kind of 14 frames rather than kind of the 12 frame cycle that I usually do. And it's always good to play around with your timing conventions as well, so that stuff doesn't feel too similar. There's lots of ways that you can mix stuff up with timing, posing, spacing. And it's good to always be playing with your ideals of what you're used to or what you like, so that you can learn and grow more. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at that now. Feels a little bit better. Yeah, let's go ahead and do a little bit more rotate Z back here as well. Yeah, let's see that now. Okay, and let's go ahead and adjust our hips here. Push our weight a little bit over this foot there. And again, I realize that foot's broken, but that's kind of the feeling we want. We might adjust the posing a little bit more because it does feel a little like that ankle, at least from this angle, is a little too broken. So let's see, we got Meep visit us tonight. Meeps. Okay. Let's look at our translate Z here. Let's kind of even it out a little bit more, so we're not really favoring one side over the other. And we'll bring that back. And let's go look at that now. Okay, yeah, I feel like this heel's a little too broken from this angle, so let's go ahead and rotate X, just so that ankle isn't so busted up. Let's do that, kind of rotate better. That, as you see, there was kind of something that was unnatural, was deforming really bizarrely in the ankle, and we don't want that. Let's go and look at that now. I do feel like it's slowly going lower and lower, which I don't want, so let's go and grab our translate X's here. Let's go and push that up a little bit higher. This is more of that variation of the universal. It feels a little better. Okay, and let's go ahead and do some rotation in the hips here. We'll rotate, what is it, Y there, and then Y there, because that's the planted foot. And this is where the weight would be distributed over that foot versus over the other one. Back again, we'll zero that out. And we'll even this up a little bit more. Let's kind of look at that now. Okay, and let's look here, try to do some counter animation here. Let's rotate X then. That should be rotate Y, we'll just do only a little teeny bit here. hips as well. Let's see. Okay. Let's tone that down a bit more. And because it's a little bit laggy, I think I might do a play blast and check it out, see how we're looking when it's actually playing through. Yeah, I just think there's too much rotate Y, so let's pull that back. Okay, and let's look at this foot here. Let's go ahead and drag it back here. Let's go drag it back there and zero it out. And let's see if we can do some toe wiggle here. 2 frames later, let it land, and toe wiggle there. Just so that our foot has a little bit of change of shape there. Let's see it now. I feel like it's probably a little too high, so let's go ahead and make those steps a little bit smaller. And let's actually switch our rotate back so it kind of slaps down a little bit more. So let's look at keep the ends rotate X, ones rotate Z. Come on. Zero that out. Bring that up here. Bring that up here. Let's look at our translate Y here as well. Let's go ahead and have them hit a little bit harder, so we'll keep the foot up a little bit higher, so pound down there a little bit more. Alright, let's go ahead and save our file and let's play blast this thing and see if it's working okay. So I'm just going to pause for a second here. Okay, we've got a little too much bounce in the butt going on. If we can tone that down, I think everything else is working okay. But let's definitely get rid of that. It's a little too much when it's actually getting played. The feet feel alright though. A little bit heavier. But yeah, we need to get rid of that rotate Z, I believe it is, and just almost make it nothing. Kind of weird how that played in real time. Come on. And let's go to rotate Z. Okay, we're just gonna minimize this quite a bit. Let's look at it now. And let's even out the rotate Z on the hips a little bit more. There's not as much variety there. Let's play Blasted Rope. Okay, that's much better. That butt was just too bouncy there before. I think we can drop the head down a little bit. It does feel a little front heavy as far as the weight goes, but I think it's okay. I might keep it. I was debating whether I wanted to pull the hips just universally back a little bit to just keep it a little more balanced, but I think I like the fact that it's just perpetually kind of front heavy. It helps sell why that front foot would need to drop down so hard too. And then I also want to break the back foot a little bit as it slides forward, so we get some drag in there. Do a little bit of movement in the arms as well. Maybe dip the head down. Yeah, okay. And so where should we start here? Let's start with the head. I think universally I wanted to dip the neck and give a little more of a kind of a hunch feel to it. So I feel like it's a little too. I don't want to break the neck too much, but I feel like that's probably too much, so I'll scale it back. Okay. Now let's look at this foot. Now one thing I did want to do is I wanted to do some drag in that foot. While I'm thinking about it though, I'm just going to save the file again one more time. Takes a little bit here, and we'll go 7. Again, just want to kind of drag that foot a little bit. And then again, I just want to kind of drag it back a little bit more there. And let's give it one extra frame of rotate after the fact of the translation ending, so I get a little bit of overlap there. So let's see. Now this one, is this a better pose? Yeah, it's a little more forward there, so maybe we'll push this one a little more forward as well. And let's go ahead and do 2 frames for that rotate afterwards to settle. Need to push that foot forward a little bit more here as well. And, okay. Let's do a little bit of movement in the arms here. Just a little bit of swing to it. And that'll be 35, 42. Back again. And we'll even that up a little bit more. This is just going to be kind of keep alive. Going to be kind of maintaining these general poses. We've got enough going on in the lower part and with the posing that I don't need too much movement here in the arms, but we don't want them to lock off. And that's one of those things where it's focus on that, keep it simple, stupid, exaggerate one thing, and the rest of it you can leave a little bit of neutral or under exaggerated as well to kind of focus on what you want the eye to focus on. It's like I don't know that I always do this in my sketches, but let's say you're doing a painting, and it's a painting of a landscape, and in the front of it is a girl playing with her dog, and they're playing fetch. And if you keep everything really high res, it's going to lose some feeling to it. So what you want to do is, if you want the focus to be on the girl playing with her dog, the center point is going to be, let's say, her arms around the dog or scratching the dog's head or whatever acting choice you do, and you really render that really well. So you've got really fine and a lot of it's a detail, but as you move further away from that, you get to the point where like the background might just be like a swipe of paint with a little bit of detail in it, so that you keep the eye focused on whatever it is that you want to focus on, and that adds some contrast, and it also helps sell the point of your painting or whatever. So it's just kind of that concept, but in animation form. If we've got really exaggerated legs, we don't need really exaggerated arms. Now again, if that's the, whatever style you're going for, then you can just over exaggerate everything, and then the character who would be under exaggerated would show off as well. So it just kind of depends on what we're going for. But in something like this, I think we've got enough going on in the legs that we don't really need to have super exaggerated arm movements. This would be back a little bit. Okay, we're just going to kind of have to do this one universally. So we've got a little bit of twistiness to it, and just kind of mimic those keys there. Okay, and we'll do a little bit of breaking up on the elbow here. Back again. Maybe too much back, so we'll do less of that. Yeah, see, that just feels a little too broken. So let's see. Okay, and let's do a little bit on the wrist here. And back there. And forward there. Back there. And forward. Okay. And let's do a little bit of movement on the head. The head feels really stiff. So let's grab the head and the neck. And we'll do a little bit of bounce there. And we'll delay it a frame or two and offset it and everything to loosen it up. But we'll just give ourselves, just so we get a basic timing pass here. And let's look at the neck here. And we'll invert it so it's going the opposite way, so we get a little bit of looser movement. And let's see. again and play blast this, and then we'll... Okay, at this point, we need some more backward arm swing on the furthest from camera arm. A little bit less, probably, forearm and hand movement on this one, and a little more neck and a little less head. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and address those. So a little more neck. And that's why it's always good to have a good idea of where you're going with stuff. But with who was it? I forget. One of the teachers that I studied with worked on one of the Transformers movies, and they said the amount of controls and just overall lag and everything they would get on a rig was pretty ridiculous. So they would have to really, you could only look at your shot a couple of times, and that's the same with some of the earlier animators who couldn't get the, before they had Maya and everything, they'd have to, you could flip through your drawings, but you couldn't really get them on a projector so you could see how they played in real time at full speed and everything, except for they'd say maybe once a day or twice a day each animator got to go put theirs through, run it through, so they could really see at the right frame rate. So you kind of have to train your eye to know how much movement per frame without being able to watch it too. And I think that's an important skill to have and develop as well, so that you can kind of guess. It's like guess animating, I guess. I don't know if that's the right terminology or not, but that you have so much knowledge of how it's going to work when it's animated that you don't need to see it animated while you're working on it, which is kind of a little bit different methodology than I work through, which is a little more, let's see it, let's watch it, let's do a little more, let's watch it, let's do a little more, let's watch it. So I think it's, if you have the opportunity, I think do a little bit, watch how it moves, do a little bit more, watch how it moves until we get through there. It's probably, for me, the best way to do it, but I think it's an important skill to have if you don't have that capability because of the weightiness of your rig and you can't get it to work at speed, or because of other factors that maybe aren't as prevalent in today's animation worlds, because most computers that are, you don't have to spend $5,000 to get a computer that you could get something that can play back at speed pretty well. But I think that being said, it's still an important skill to try to acquire, so that you can work no matter what, and your animation eye is that good that you can kind of predict how this will look in movement even when it's in a still frame. And that's kind of like building arcs into your breakdowns and everything too, so that you know that, well, this is going to lead into there and this is going to lead into there. It's just a good skill to develop. Yeah, let's go ahead and grab all of the mids and tips here, if I can actually select them. And I'll go ahead and delay those a frame. Just grab the tips. I'll go and delay those a frame as well. That way we should get a little bit of successive movement there. Again, nothing I really want to super exaggerate, but definitely want to break up the movement a little bit more. So we're going to delay the pinky by a frame and take the index finger and we'll push it forward a frame. Do a little bit of movement on this thumb here. Let's grab both of them. If we can, grab both of those. And we'll go 14. And we'll bring it of sway in these fingers as well. Okay, so we'll go here to 7, and maybe swinging kind of forward there, back at 21, forward there, and back at 59 or 49, and then back forward again. And then we'll grab the mids and the tips, and we'll go ahead and delay those all a frame just so we get that successive movement. And all of the tips. We'll delay those one more frame. We're just kind of taking the same approach that we took with the other hand there. And then we'll take everything on the pinky and delay a frame. And again, this is just if we're trying to get an animation done in an hour, a good methodology that keeps everything alive and not feeling super similar as well. And a lot of the techniques and reasons for choosing the way I animate is because I want to get you guys something that's a workable with a bit of polish animation within an hour, which is a good challenge. Try and give yourself a kind of a time limit with which to produce something decent. And it's another reason why a lot of like quick gesture drawing is a good challenge for an artist or illustrator as well, is because you want to get the heart or the meat of the pose down quickly, and then you can go off and add the details in later. So this is kind of a pass like that about really getting the heart or the meat of a quick idea, 2-second animation down quickly. So it's kind of that same gesture drawing or improvisational kind of work there. I feel like this wrist is probably moving a little too much, so I think I'm going to scale that back a little bit more. And maybe we'll do a little more in the arm itself. Okay, I'm just going to pause again while I play blast here. Okay, I still feel like this closest to us arms just has a little too much movement. Maybe we could do a little bit of bounce in the jaw as well. I think the head's pretty subtle enough that there's some movement to it, but it's not really distracting. I'm debating whether I want to amp up that other forearm. I feel like it works okay though. But yeah, I think I want to tone down this arm, just overall everything by about 3%, and then do a little bit of jaw, and I think that'll do it for today. So let's go ahead and just tone everything down just a little bit. I think I like the overall movement. It's just a little still too busy for me. So I'm just gonna crank it back just a little bit here. And again, this is the only part that I think becomes a little tedious with animation that you can't really watch at speed while is doing these things where it's like, oh, I want a little bit less of that. When it's a good amount, you can kind of chuck it in, but when it's kind of give and take, oh, a little bit less, oh, a little bit more, oh, a little bit less, oh, a little bit more. That's the stuff that's really beneficial to have something that plays back at speed. But if you don't have that, that's okay. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of bounce on the jaw. So we'll just bring it up here and down there, up here, down there. We're going to delay this by a couple of frames here as well, and I'm sure it's going to be too much at this point. Okay, so first of all, I want to get it a little more even. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't really care about the evenness in the jaw. It can have some lower ones and some bigger ones. That's fine, but I do want to make sure that it's not too distracting or too busy. It's just more of a feel it kind of thing. So let's see how much jaw we've got there. Alright, now we retweaked the arm again and we did some jaw, so I think it's good to do another play blast pass and see if there's anything else we want to touch up before we call it for the day. So I'm just gonna pop. Okay, overall I feel like that's working. I think one more thing I'd like to do before I call it for the day, because I'm sure we're probably at an hour if not over, is maybe do a little bit of bounce in the brows as well, just to loosen up that face a little bit more. So let's go ahead and turn that off, and let's look at the brow. And again, not a ton, but we're just going to do a little bit of down, a little bit of up, a little bit of down, a little bit of up. And again, we'll probably tone this down as well. I don't need a lot of that, but just so we get some more looseness and make the face feel more fleshy, I guess would be the terminology there. Because it's not like your skull is moving, but I'm talking to you or I'm moving my face really quick. There's a lot of flesh involved in the face, so you want to kind of keep some liveliness or some bounce to anything that you want to appear fleshy, so that it feels like it's not super rigid bone there. So let's kind of just leaf through here. Okay, like I said, just a little bit. We didn't need a lot in there. Let's go turn our curves off here. And we're going to kind of set up our camera, which is fine right about there. Get a decent silhouette. Probably could have pushed that arm forward a little bit more, that arm back, or just change our perspective a little bit more. Okay, I think that's... Okay, we'll keep it there. So play the last thing. Okay, I think that turned out alright. Definitely we could do another hour or so polishing it up and cleaning up everything, tightening it up, and mixing our timing up even more, but I think overall that idea works okay. So let's take a look back at where we started. We're looking at the beautiful work of Frank Quitely. Again, who knows how much I'm mispronouncing everything sometimes, so let me know in the comments down below. If I'm totally butchering something, I'm happy to learn more. And the great quote though that he said, and the great work that he did that we saw was, like with everything I do, it's just a question of seeing it work in my mind and spending as long as it takes to make it work on paper. And I think that kind of was exemplified actually in the stuff that we did here, because we couldn't have it play back at speed. We had to do a little more work in our mind. And like I said, I think you should always use the utensils and the skills that you have available with you to make anything as good as it can be. Don't ever say, you know what, I want to not have to use this because it makes me better. If there's something that you can do that you can add to your piece, or some software that you can use, or a certain pen that you can use, in the end, what the audience sees is just the end result, not necessarily what tools you use to get there. So I think it's important to use all that stuff, but a great tool that really can't be beat is right up here: your imagination, your creativity, your special personality, and the things that make you unique. So use that as much as you can. I love you guys lots. If you're watching this, don't ever forget that you are the creative future. So go out there and create as much awesome and amazing and wonderful stuff as you can each and every day. And I think that'll do it for today. So I guess that means that we will see you for some more animation tomorrow.